The ballroom of the San Francisco Grand Hotel glittered under 1,000 crystal lights. Reporters crowded the back rows, cameras poised like predators ready to capture every movement. Investors in tailored suits filled the front, their faces glowing with anticipation. On stage, Ethan Cole adjusted his tie, exhaled slowly, and stepped up to the podium. At 32, he had already been hailed as Silicon Valley's golden boy, the face of the next generation of American innovation. His tech company, Neurosphere, had just been valued at nearly $1 billion. Tonight's press conference was supposed to seal his place among the titans. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan began, his voice steady, confident. 7 years ago, Neurosphere was nothing more than an idea scribbled on the back of a diner napkin. Tonight, that idea has become reality. We're unveiling Neuralink, a breakthrough in brain-to-cloud connectivity. This isn't just the future of technology, it's the future of humanity. Applause thundered across the hall. Reporters scrambled to capture every word. Ethan's heart surged with pride. In the front row, Madison Clark, his girlfriend of 3 years, sat in a navy cocktail dress, her long auburn hair shining under the lights. She smiled at him, eyes brimming with pride. That look, soft, trusting, unwavering, was all the fuel he needed. In that moment, Ethan believed he had it all: $1 billion company, the woman he loved, and a limitless future. When the presentation ended, investors swarmed the stage. Hands shook, cameras flashed, promises of multi-million-dollar deals buzzed in the air. Ethan soaked it in like a man standing at the top of the world. Then, it all collapsed. A voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a blade. "Mr. Cole, do you have a comment about the financial fraud allegations?" The ballroom froze. The question came from a reporter in the back, holding up his phone, its screen glowing with breaking news. "What allegations?" Ethan demanded, his smile faltering. The giant LED screen behind him flickered. The Neurosphere logo disappeared, replaced by a breaking news banner. Neurosphere accused of fabricating revenue. CEO Ethan Cole under federal investigation. Lines of so-called evidence flashed across the screen: falsified bank statements, doctored revenue charts, leaked emails. It was a perfectly timed ambush. The applause that had roared moments earlier turned into hushed whispers, then into outright panic. Investors' smiles vanished. Some were already pulling out their phones, barking orders to their brokers. A few stormed out without a word. Ethan's stomach dropped. His palms went cold. At that moment, Ryan Hale, his co-founder and best friend since college, stepped onto the stage. His expression was carefully controlled, a mask of grim professionalism. "We apologize for this shocking development," Ryan said into the microphone. "Neurosphere is committed to full cooperation with the authorities. Our priority is to protect our investors." The words slammed into Ethan like a freight train. Protect our investors. Not protect my partner. Not Ethan is innocent. Just a neat little speech that shoved all the blame squarely onto Ethan. "Ryan, what the hell are you doing?" Ethan hissed under his breath, but Ryan ignored him, addressing the press like the polished executive he'd always wanted to be, in the front row. Madison shot up from her seat, rushing forward. Her hand gripped Ethan's arm. Her eyes were wide, glassy with fear. "Ethan," she whispered, "tell me this isn't true. Please, tell me you didn't." Her voice broke. The world seemed to stop. Ethan looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had once believed in him without question. Now he saw doubt, hesitation. The same doubt he saw mirrored in every camera lens, every whisper in the crowd. "You don't believe me either." His voice cracked, quiet enough that only she could hear. Madison opened her mouth, but no words came. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust in Ethan's face. "Did you falsify your financial records, Mr. Cole? Are you prepared to resign as CEO? Do you expect criminal charges?" Flashes exploded in his eyes. Shouts drowned out his thoughts. The air itself felt toxic, heavy with suspicion. Just hours ago, Ethan Cole had been Silicon Valley's prodigy. Now he was being torn apart, live in front of the world by nightfall. The headlines were everywhere. Golden boy to fallen star. Ethan Cole accused of massive fraud. Neurosphere stock plummets overnight. Is this the end of Ethan Cole? Ethan stumbled out of the Grand Hotel hours later. The city lights of San Francisco blurred through the rain. His Armani suit clung damply to his skin, ruined. Reporters still lingered outside, shouting questions as he forced his way into the street. Head bowed, fists clenched, he didn't answer. He couldn't. All he could hear was the roaring in his ears, the sound of everything he'd built collapsing in a single evening. He thought of Ryan's calm betrayal, Madison's uncertain eyes, the investor's cold retreat. He thought of the years spent clawing his way up from nothing, the sacrifices, the blood and sleepless nights. And he thought of how easily it had all been ripped away, standing alone in the rain. Ethan whispered to himself, voice raw, teeth gritted. They think I'm finished. They think I'll just disappear. But I'll come back, stronger, and when I do, Ryan Hale will pay. Lightning tore across the night sky, illuminating his figure in the storm. The golden boy of Silicon Valley had fallen, but in the ashes of his ruin, a vow of vengeance was born. The next morning, San Francisco woke up to Ethan Cole's ruin. His face, once splashed across Forbes and TechCrunch as the future of Silicon Valley, now stared back at him from tabloids at every newsstand, the headlines screaming like executioners. From visionary to villain, the rise and fall of Ethan Cole, federal probe into neurospheres. Finances, Cole abandoned by investors and board. Ethan sat alone in his former apartment. The lease was under Neurosphere's corporate account. He had until the end of the week before he'd be locked out. His inbox was flooded with termination notices, lawyer demands, subpoenas. His phone buzzed non-stop with missed calls from journalists. He tossed the phone onto the couch, letting it vibrate against the cushions like an angry hornet. His mind, however, wasn't on the headlines. It was on Ryan Hale. Ryan, the kid from Ohio State who shared ramen with him in a cramped dorm room. Ryan, who used to talk about changing the world over all-night coding sessions. Ryan, who stood beside him the day they signed their first seed check. And now Ryan, who had calmly fed him to the wolves. By late afternoon, Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He had to face him. He slipped on a hoodie, pulled the cap low over his eyes, and made his way to Neurosphere's sleek downtown headquarters. The building was crawling with chaos investigators in suits carting out boxes. Employees whispering in clumps by the elevators, some crying, some already carrying cardboard boxes with their belongings. They stared when they saw him, whispers spreading like wildfire. That's him. Is he going to jail? He looks older overnight. Ethan ignored them, storming through the glass doors into the executive suite. He pushed open the CEO office, the one that had been his yesterday. Ryan Hale was already there, seated comfortably behind the mahogany desk, a latte in hand. He looked up slowly, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Ethan," Ryan said smoothly, as though greeting an old friend. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Ethan slammed the door shut behind him. "What the hell did you do?" Ryan leaned back in the chair, crossing one leg over the other, radiating the calm confidence of a man who'd already won. "I did what had to be done," Ryan replied. "You were reckless, obsessed with your precious Neuralink while ignoring the numbers. Investors don't care about changing the world. Ethan, they care about profit, stability, and you." He gestured toward. "Ethan, you were a liability." Ethan's fists clenched. "You set me up." "Those doctored records are convincing enough for the SEC," Ryan interrupted, his smile widening. "And by the time the dust settles, guess who will be left standing as the responsible adult in the room? Me, you son of a." Ethan lunged forward, but Ryan didn't flinch. "Go ahead," Ryan said softly. "Hit me. Give the press one more headline. Disgraced CEO assaults former partner. Do it, Ethan. Prove them right." Ethan froze, chest heaving. Every muscle in his body screamed to break Ryan's smug face, but some shred of self-control held him back. "You think you've won," Ethan spat. "But this isn't over." Ryan's smirk hardened into something darker. "Oh, it's over. By tomorrow, the board will remove you officially. Neurosphere will be mine. And Madison?" He paused deliberately, watching Ethan's eyes narrow. "Well, let's just say she deserves someone who isn't drowning in scandal." Rage exploded through Ethan's veins. "Stay the hell away from her." Ryan only laughed. Still so predictable. Security arrived moments later, two bulky men in suits who escorted Ethan out of the building like a criminal. Phones were raised, employees whispering, recording. His humiliation was complete. By the time he hit the sidewalk, the drizzle had started again, soft rain misting over Market Street. Ethan pulled his hood tighter and walked aimlessly. Every step heavy with the weight of betrayal. Madison's text from last night replayed in his mind. "Please tell me it isn't true. Please." He hadn't answered. He couldn't. How do you explain to the woman you love that your entire world just collapsed at the hands of the man you once called brother? That night, Ethan found himself in a dive bar on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place with flickering neon lights and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 90s. The bartender gave him a once-over, but said nothing, just slid a glass of whiskey his way. Ethan downed it in one gulp. Then another. His reflection in the mirror behind the bar startled him. Hollow eyes, stubble already shadowing his jaw. A man aged 10 years in 24 hours. He pressed his forehead to the cool wood of the counter, whispering to himself, "You had it all. And you lost it." To him, but beneath the despair, something else stirred a spark. A fire that no amount of whiskey or headlines could extinguish. Ryan thought he'd buried him. The world thought he was finished. But Ethan Cole wasn't built to stay down. Slowly, he straightened, pushing the glass away. His hand trembled, but his eyes hardened, steel cutting through the haze of defeat. "Enjoy my company while you can, Ryan," he muttered under his breath. "Because when I come back I'll take back everything you stole. And this time, I won't show mercy." Outside, the rain hammered harder against the city streets. But Ethan didn't feel the chill anymore. For the first time since the collapse, he felt something close to clarity. This was no longer about survival. This was about vengeance. And vengeance, he promised himself, would be the fuel for his resurrection. The rain had cleared by morning, leaving San Francisco wrapped in a cold, grey mist. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat at the edge of his bed in the small studio he'd rented for. Emergencies, one of the few things Ryan hadn't stripped from him. The city outside buzzed, as always, but for Ethan. The world felt strangely silent, as if holding its breath. A knock broke through the quiet, sharp, hesitant. He knew before he opened the door who it was. She stood there in a beige trench coat, hair damp from the drizzle, eyes rimmed red as if she hadn't slept either. For a long moment, neither spoke. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to pull her close, bury his face in her hair, pretend none of this was real. But the look on her face stopped him cold. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. Ethan stepped aside, letting her in. She scanned the small, bare apartment, the cracked blinds, the half-empty takeout containers, the unopened letters from lawyers piled on the table. It was a far cry from the luxury condo they'd once shared in Soma. She folded her arms, as if bracing herself. "I need to hear it from you, Ethan. Did you do it?" The words sliced through the air. "No." His answer came instantly, without hesitation. He met her eyes, desperate for her to see the truth. "Madison, I swear on everything, I didn't touch those funds. Ryan, he set me up. He wanted the company for himself." Madison shook her head, tears gathering. "Do you realize how crazy that sounds? Ryan was your partner, your best friend, and that's exactly why he could pull it off," Ethan snapped, frustration bleeding through. "Who else had access? Who else stood to gain? You saw him last night. Madison, he threw me to the wolves without blinking." She bit her lip, torn. "Ethan, I want to believe you. God, I do. But everything in the news, the documents, the board statements all points to you. And if you didn't do it, why didn't you fight back on stage? Why did you just stand there?" Ethan's hands curled into fists. "Because I was blindsided. You think I had a neat little speech prepared for being stabbed in the back by my own brother?" His voice cracked, anger and despair colliding. Madison flinched. Silence fell. The only sound was the faint hum of traffic outside. Finally, she whispered, "Do you love me, Ethan?" The question caught him off guard. "Of course I love you. You're the only thing that's kept me sane. Then why?" Her voice trembled. "Why does it feel like I don't know who you are anymore? The Ethan I fell in love with wanted to change the world. Now all I see is a man burning with anger, obsessed with revenge." Ethan staggered back, as if struck. He tried to speak, but the words lodged in his throat. Was she right? Was vengeance all he had left? Madison's tears spilled. "I can't do this, Ethan. Not when I don't know the truth. Not when I don't know if you're going to prison or worse. If you're lying to me, Madison, please," he choked, reaching for her hand. "Don't let him take you from me, too. Don't let Ryan win that way." She pulled her hand back, her body trembling. "I need space, time, maybe. Maybe when the truth comes out, we can talk again. But right now," her voice broke. "Right now, I can't stand here and pretend everything's okay." She turned toward the door. Ethan's chest ached so fiercely he thought it might split open. "Madison," he called after her, his voice ragged. She froze, but didn't look back. "I didn't betray you. I didn't betray us. Remember that. She hesitated just long enough for him to hope, then walked out. The door clicking shut behind her. Ethan stood there, staring at the empty space she left behind, his hand still outstretched. The silence of the apartment was suffocating. The hours bled together after that. Ethan drifted from room to room, unable to eat, unable to think. He replayed every word Madison had said, every flicker of doubt in her eyes. The Madison who had once been his anchor now felt like a stranger, torn from him not by choice, but by lies carefully spun by the man he used to trust most. The betrayal cut twice as deep. Ryan had taken his company, his reputation. And now, Madison, by evening, Ethan found himself standing at the window, staring down at the blurred city lights. His reflection in the glass was almost unrecognizable, unshaven, hollow-eyed, a fallen king. For a moment, despair threatened to drown him. What if Ryan had won completely? What if there was nothing left to fight for? But then he remembered Madison's last words. Maybe when the truth comes out, we can talk again. The truth. That was his way back. His only way. Ethan grabbed his laptop, powering it up for the first time since the collapse. Neurosphere servers had locked him out, but he still had access to old backups. Private notes, data Ryan didn't know existed. If Ryan had framed him, there would be evidence somewhere. A trail. No one was careful enough to erase everything. Hours passed as he combed through encrypted files, contracts, times. His eyes burned, his fingers ached, but his determination sharpened with every keystroke at 3 a.m. He finally hit something, a financial log from 3 months earlier, routed through a shell account. Transactions disguised as vendor payments, redirected to an offshore trust. The account was under a name Ethan recognized instantly. Ethan sat back, heart pounding. It wasn't enough yet, not for the feds, not for Madison, but it was a crack in the wall. Proof that Ryan wasn't untouchable. For the first time in days, Ethan felt a surge of hope. He whispered into the empty room, his voice steady. You wanted to bury me, Ryan, but you forgot one thing. I'm not done. The eviction notice came on a Thursday morning, taped neatly to Ethan's apartment door like a scarlet letter. Lease terminated. Vacate within 7 days. He stared at it for a long time, the bold black letters blurring into one another. He'd known it was coming. Most of his assets had been frozen, and Neurosphere's corporate accounts, which had once funded his lifestyle, were gone. Still, seeing it in writing carved a hollow pit in his chest. He ripped the notice down, crumpled it in his fist, and tossed it into the overflowing trash bin by the door by the weekend. He was gone. The luxury condo in Soma was a memory. His Tesla repossessed. His personal assistant long since disappeared. Even the circle of friends who used to flood his rooftop parties had evaporated overnight. The same people who once toasted him as Silicon Valley's golden boy now avoided his calls, as if his downfall were contagious. Ethan found himself crashing on the couch of Jason Miller, an old college buddy who worked as a freelance graphic designer. Jason's apartment was a cramped one-bedroom in Oakland, its living room cluttered with empty pizza boxes and tangled cords. The couch sagged under Ethan's weight, but it was all he had left. Jason tried to lighten the mood. Hey, at least you're back to your roots, man. Remember college? We slept on floors, lived off burritos. You'll bounce back. Ethan forced a smile, but inside, shame burned. He wasn't a college kid anymore. He was 32, a man who'd flown private jets, closed billion-dollar deals, and now he couldn't even afford rent. The days that followed blurred into monotony. Ethan needed money if only to eat and pay for data to keep. Digging into Ryan's betrayal, he signed up for delivery apps, ferrying tacos and bubble tea across the Bay Area in Jason's beat-up Honda Civic. Every time he dropped off an order, he prayed the customer wouldn't recognize him. Sometimes they did. One night, a college kid opened the door, squinting at him. "Wait, aren't you Ethan Cole, the fraud guy?" Ethan froze, heat crawling up his neck. He shoved the bag into the kid's hands and turned back to the car without a word. Laughter followed him down the hallway. Another time at a gas station, he caught his reflection in the cracked restroom mirror, unshaven, hoodie-stained, eyes shadowed. He barely recognized the man staring back. This was rock bottom. Madison hadn't called, hadn't texted. He told himself he didn't blame her, who would want to be tied to a pariah. But her silence gnawed at him. At night, lying awake on Jason's sagging couch, he replayed their last conversation in endless loops. "I need space. Maybe when the truth comes out." The words were both a dagger and a lifeline. She hadn't said goodbye. Not completely, but space felt like abandonment, and in the darkness, loneliness wrapped around him tighter than chains. One evening, after a 14-hour delivery shift, Ethan collapsed onto Jason's couch with his laptop. His body ached, his pride was in tatters. But the fire inside him refused to die. He reopened the encrypted files he'd found, combing through line after line of financial logs. His vision blurred from exhaustion, but he pressed on. Ryan Hale thought he had buried him, thought Ethan would fade away under the weight of scandal. But Ethan wasn't built to disappear. Every odd job, every humiliation, it was fuel. Fuel for the day he would stand again. Late one night, he delivered to a small co-working space in Berkeley. A group of young coders sat huddled around laptops, empty Red Bulls scattered across the table. Their leader, a wiry 20-something named Diego Alvarez, signed for the order, then did a double take. "Holy shit. You're Ethan Cole." Ethan stiffened. He waited for the ridicule, the sneer. But Diego's eyes lit up with admiration. "You built Neurosphere. Man, your white paper on neural data compression. I studied that in grad school. You're the reason I even started coding." Ethan blinked, stunned. "You still respect me? After everything?" Diego shrugged. "The media loves tearing people down, but genius doesn't just vanish. If you ever want to hang with us, we'd kill to hear your ideas." For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt something other than despair. Respect, recognition, a reminder that he was more than the scandal splashed across headlines. He left the co-working space that night with a smile tugging at his lips. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't finished. Back at Jason's apartment, Ethan pulled out his notebook, the same one he used in college, its pages yellowed and dogged. He began sketching, scribbling equations, outlining ideas that had been dormant under the weight of betrayal. Neuralink had been Ryan's prize now. Fine, Ethan would build something new, something bigger, but this time it wouldn't just be about proving his genius. It would be about vengeance, about reclaiming his name, his future, and the woman he loved. At dawn, Jason stumbled out of his bedroom to find Ethan hunched over the table, eyes bloodshot but burning with intensity. "Jesus. Man," Jason muttered, rubbing his eyes. "You look possessed." Ethan leaned back, grinning faintly. "Not possessed, focused. Ryan Hale thinks I'm done. He has no idea what's coming. The world believed Ethan Cole was finished. Stripped of wealth, mocked in public, abandoned by allies, he had fallen as far as a man could fall. But deep inside, a spark glowed hotter each day. Rock bottom wasn't the end. It was the foundation, and from this foundation, Ethan Cole would rise again. The following week, Ethan found himself back at the Barclay co-working space where he'd delivered food. It was late past midnight, but the place buzzed with life. Young programmers huddled around glowing monitors, fueled by pizza, energy drinks, and unshakable ambition. Diego Alvarez spotted him at the door and grinned. "I told the guys you might come. They didn't believe me. Now you're her Ethan Cole in the flesh." Ethan managed a wry smile. "Guess I'm not dead yet." The room erupted in cheers and nervous laughter. For them, Ethan wasn't just a disgraced CEO, he was a legend. A name from textbooks, a man who'd touched the edge of greatness. Diego shoved a chair toward him. "Sit. We want to hear everything. Neuralink, the early days, the failures. Don't sugarcoat it." For hours, Ethan talked. He told them about the nights coding until dawn, the string of rejections from VCs, the gamble that finally paid off. He spoke honestly about mistakes burning through cash, trusting too easily, believing hype. The kids listened like disciples. But what struck Ethan most was the fire in their eyes. He remembered when he'd had that same fire, before money and betrayal blurred his vision. When the sun rose, Diego leaned across the table. "We've been hacking on something small, eye-driven, cognitive mapping. Nothing fancy, just a prototype. But with your brain, this could be more than a side project. It could be the next neurosphere." Ethan hesitated. "You know what working with me means. Blacklisted investors. Media painting me as poison. You really want to hitch your wagon to that?" Diego shrugged. "We don't care about optics. We care about building. Isn't that what you wanted once?" The words hit Ethan like a jolt of caffeine. Building. That's all he'd ever wanted. Later that day, Ethan walked home through Telegraph Avenue, the streets alive with students and coffee shops. He passed a newsstand where his face still graced a tabloid cover. Cole, still silent amid growing scandal. He tore his eyes away, but no matter where he went, Madison haunted him. Her last words echoed like a curse. "I don't know who you are anymore." He replayed the memory of her pulling her hand from his, the sound of the door closing behind her. He wanted to call her, to tell her about Diego's team, to say he was fighting for something again. But the silence between them stretched like an unbridgeable canyon. Not yet, he thought. First, he'd need proof of his innocence. First, he'd need to rise. That night, Ethan returned to Jason's apartment, pulled out his battered notebook, and began sketching alongside Diego's prototype. The idea was raw, messy, fragile, but it was something, he called it, Cognifier platform that could map and predict thought patterns using lightweight AI models. Unlike Neuralink, it didn't need invasive hardware or billion-dollar infrastructure. It was lean, accessible, revolutionary in its simplicity. Jason peeked over his shoulder. "This looks insane, in a good way. You really think you can build this with a handful of kids and no money?" Ethan smirked. "I built Neurosphere in a garage. Why not build Cognify in a co-working space?" Jason raised a brow. "And what about Ryan? He's got the board, the patents, the investors. He'll crush you if he finds out." Ethan's jaw tightened. Let him try. Days turned into weeks. Ethan split his time between delivery shifts and nights coding with Diego's ragtag crew. Slowly Cognify began to take shape. A prototype dashboard, a predictive model that worked barely, but it worked. For the first time since the collapse, Ethan felt alive. Every line of code was a step away from despair, a step toward redemption. One night, as they tested the system, Diego leaned back with a grin. "You know what this means, right? With a demo this strong, we could pitch seed funding. Even without your name." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Especially without my name." Diego shook his head. "You don't get it. You're not poison to us. You're proof that we can fall, lose everything, and still fight back. Investors will see that too eventually." For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to believe it. But shadows lingered one morning. Ethan woke to a barrage of notifications on his cracked phone. A news alert: Ryan Hale, new CEO of Neurosphere, announces partnership with global telecom giant. There he was, smiling on stage, shaking hands with executives, basking in the spotlight that had once belonged to Ethan. The article praised Ryan's stability and integrity, contrasting it with Ethan's recklessness. Ethan's blood boiled. Ryan had stolen not only the company, but also the narrative, twisting the world to believe he was the savior, not the saboteur. Jason watched Ethan's reaction carefully. "Don't let this eat you alive. You're building something new. Don't waste energy chasing him." But Ethan shook his head, fire burning in his eyes. "This isn't about chasing him. It's about taking back what he stole, and proving Madison was wrong to doubt me." That night, alone at the co-working space, Ethan stared at the prototype flickering on the screen. Cognify wasn't ready. The team was small. Resources were scarce, but it was real. It was his. He pressed his hand flat against the desk, grounding himself. "Ryan Hale," he whispered into the dark. "You may have taken my company, my reputation, my love, but you haven't killed me. And when I rise again, it won't just be to survive. It'll be to destroy you." The words echoed in the empty room. A vow carved into the silence, and as the first rays of dawn spilled through the windows, Ethan, cold disgraced, broke, abandoned, felt something dangerous stir in his chest. Hope. The co-working space smelled of cold pizza and burnt coffee. Ethan sat hunched over his laptop at 3 a.m, eyes bloodshot, fingers flying across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled past like rain on glass. Around him, Diego's team dozed in beanbags or scribbled diagrams on whiteboards, their youthful energy finally giving way to exhaustion. But Ethan couldn't sleep. Not when the shadows of betrayal pressed in so close. He'd been combing through encrypted archives for weeks. Now old Neurosphere backups, forgotten contracts, side accounts Ryan never thought he'd find. Most nights turned up nothing. But tonight was different. A series of offshore transfers lit up his screen. Small enough to avoid early suspicion, but consistent, regular. The name tied to the shell company was one Ethan knew too well. His pulse hammered. It was Ryan's name, right there, hidden in plain sight. He sat back, rubbing his face with shaking hands. It wasn't yet the smoking gun he needed in court, but it was more than whispers, more than gut instinct. This was a thread he could pull and unravel everything. The next morning, Diego found him still at the desk, pale but electric with energy. "Jesus, Ethan, You even human, Diego muttered, tossing him a Red Bull. You've been at this for 2 days straight. Ethan cracked the can and took a long gulp. I found it. Proof of Ryan's siphoning. Not enough for the feds yet, but it's a start. Diego's eyes widened. You serious? Ethan spun the laptop to face him. These accounts. Transfers masked as vendor payments. All routed back to Ryan. If we can trace the chain far enough, we can expose him. Diego let out a low whistle. Damn, you really were set up. The words hit Ethan harder than he expected. For weeks, he'd been choking on the need for anyone to believe him. Madison hadn't. The board hadn't. The world hadn't. But Diego, a 20-something kid with nothing to gain, looked at him with raw conviction. You're not the villain they paint you as, Diego said. You're the guy who got burned by someone too afraid of your fire. Ethan's throat tightened. He masked it with a cough. Don't make me sound noble. I'm still chasing revenge. Diego grinned. Maybe, but revenge sometimes builds damn good companies. Later that day, Ethan stepped outside for air. The Berkeley streets were buzzing with students and food trucks, but all he felt was a hollow ache. He pulled out his phone, staring at Madison's name in his contacts. He wanted to call her, tell her he had proof, tell her he wasn't the liar she feared, tell her he was fighting, but his thumb hovered, then fell away. What if she still doubted him? What if Ryan had already poisoned her with his charm, his lies? The thought twisted in his gut. Better to wait, better to have irrefutable evidence before reaching out. Still, the silence cut deep. That evening, as the team worked on Cognify's prototype, the glass door of the co-working space swung open. A woman in a sleek black blazer stepped inside, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. She carried herself with the kind of authority that made the kids instantly sit up straighter. Ethan froze. He knew that face. Claire Donovan, Neurosphere's former chief financial officer. She'd resigned suddenly, just before the scandal broke. Her departure barely a footnote in the chaos. Ethan, she said, voice cool but edged with something sharp. We need to talk. The room went silent. Ethan gestured toward a side office. In here, once the door shut, Claire crossed her arms. You're digging, aren't you? Ethan didn't bother denying it. Ryan framed me. I'm not going down without a fight. Claire's eyes softened, just slightly. I knew something was wrong. The numbers didn't add up, but Ryan blocked my access before I could confirm. I walked away before I got dragged under with him. You have records. Ethan pressed, hope sparking. She hesitated. I have fragments. Enough to suggest fraud, not enough to prove it. But if you've already found offshore accounts, I have the trail, Ethan said. What I don't have is the credibility. Everyone thinks I'm guilty. Claire studied him. Then you need allies. And you need to be smarter than Ryan ever thinks you can be. That night, alone again at the desk, Ethan stared at the fragments Claire had provided. They aligned with his findings perfectly, a puzzle slowly taking shape. But exposing Ryan wouldn't just clear his name. It would drag Neurosphere down with him. Hundreds of employees, billions in investor money, collateral damage, and Madison. If Ryan went down, Madison would see the truth. But she'd also see Ethan as the man who burned a company to the ground just to prove himself right. His chest tightened. Could he risk it? The next morning, Ethan gathered Diego and the team. He laid out the evidence, the accounts, Claire's records. "This is it," he said. "The beginning of the end for Ryan Hale." The kids buzzed with excitement, but Ethan's face stayed grim. He wasn't celebrating. Not yet, because this revelation wasn't just about Ryan's fraud. It was about Ethan's choice. Would he take Ryan down at any cost if it meant becoming the villain the world already believed he was? Or would he find a way to rise without dragging everyone else into the fire? For now, the only certainty was this: the truth was no longer buried. And once unleashed, it could change everything: his career, his love, his very soul. That night, Ethan sat alone in the dark, the glow of the laptop illuminating his weary face. He whispered the words like a promise to himself, to Madison, to the world that had abandoned him. "They called me a fraud. They buried me alive, but the truth is coming. And when it does, Ryan Hale won't just lose the company, he'll lose everything." His reflection stared back at him in the black screen, eyes burning with a mix of pain and determination. Ethan Cole was broken, but in that brokenness, something unstoppable was beginning to grow. The buzz started small. At first, Cognify was just a prototype in a dusty co-working space, a half-finished codebase powered by caffeine and stubborn ambition. But word spread. A demo leaked students whispering about the disgraced Ethan Cole building something new, something cleaner and sharper than Neuralink. By the end of the month, whispers had turned into chatter. A few local bloggers wrote pieces: "The Fallen Titan, Ethan Cole's quiet return." Cognify, the underdog project that might rewrite AI. Ethan didn't chase the attention, but he didn't hide either. This time, there were no flashy press conferences, no champagne launches, just late nights, small wins, and code that actually worked. Diego stormed into the workspace one morning, waving his phone. "Dude, you're not going to believe this. A seed fund out of Palo Alto wants a meeting." They saw the prototype video. Ethan frowned. "Which fund?" "Blue Horizon Ventures," Diego said, grinning. "Not top tier, but they're hungry for disruptive tech." The room erupted in cheers. For the kids, it was validation. For Ethan, it was something more, a second chance. But with that chance came risk. If Ryan caught wind, he'd crush them before they even stood. The meeting took place in a minimalist office overlooking Sand Hill Road. Ethan wore the only suit he had left, a little wrinkled but presentable. Diego and two of the younger coders sat beside him, nervous but excited. Across the table, three investors studied them with sharp eyes. "Mr. Cole, the lead partner, began, 'Your name carries.'" "Wait, some would call it baggage." Ethan leaned forward, voice steady. "I won't deny my past. I was betrayed, framed by someone I trusted. But I learned. Cognify isn't about headlines. It's about technology that empowers people without billion-dollar infrastructure. It's lean, it's fast, and it works." He pulled up the demo, showing how Cognify could map user decision-making patterns in real time. The investors leaned closer, intrigued despite themselves. "This is impressive," one admitted. "But you realize, if we back you, we'll be battling not just market forces, but public opinion." Neurosphere still casts a long shadow. Ethan met their gaze. "I don't need everyone to believe in me. I just need the right people to believe in the product." For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then the lead partner smiled faintly. "You've still got fire, Cole. We'll think it over." That evening, Ethan walked out of the building and froze. Across the street, he spotted a familiar figure, Madison. She wasn't alone. 2 colleagues from her PR firm walked beside her, chatting animatedly. But Madison's eyes flicked across the street, locking on his for a fleeting second. Her step faltered. Her lips parted as if to say something. But then one of her colleagues called her name, and she turned away, disappearing into the crowd. Ethan's chest clenched. She'd seen him. She knew he was still fighting. Maybe, just maybe, hope wasn't dead. The next morning, Ethan's phone buzzed with another headline. Ryan Hale denounces shameless copycat. Project by former partner. The article quoted Ryan directly. It's sad, really. Ethan Cole once had potential, but he's clinging to scraps, trying to rebuild credibility with a knockoff project. Neurosphere will always be the true innovator. Ethan's blood boiled. Ryan hadn't just noticed Cognify, he was moving to crush it publicly by afternoon. Neurosphere filed a cease and desist letter, accusing Cognify of intellectual property theft. Lawyers claimed Ethan had stolen Neurosphere's algorithms. Diego slammed the letter on the table. This is bullshit. We built everything from scratch. Ethan's jaw tightened. He's trying to scare us. He wants us to fold before we even begin. Can he actually shut us down? One of the coders asked, fear creeping into his voice. Not if we fight back, Ethan said. His voice was firm, though his stomach churned. That night, Claire Donovan called. I heard about the letter, she said. Typical Ryan. He's bluffing. Neurosphere's patents don't cover what you're doing. But he's betting you don't have the money for a legal battle. He's right, Ethan admitted. Maybe not for long, Claire replied. I've been speaking with a few. Quiet backers. People who don't trust Ryan. If you can show more evidence of his fraud, they might be willing to support you. Ethan's pulse quickened. Allies, investors, the possibility of resources. Send me everything you've got, he told her. It's time to turn the tables. The next few weeks were a blur. Cognify kept building, inching closer to a product worth betting on. Investors hovered, watching carefully. Ryan's lawyers kept sending threats, but Ethan refused to yield. Every night, he stared at the offshore account logs, at the proof of Ryan's betrayal. He wasn't ready to unleash it yet, but when he did, it would shatter Neurosphere's pristine facade, and through it all, Madison lingered in his mind. The fleeting look she'd given him outside the investor meeting, the unspoken words in her eyes. He wasn't just fighting for redemption. He was fighting for Hereford the chance to stand before her again, not as a disgraced man clinging to survival, but as someone worthy of her trust. One evening, Diego burst into the workspace, waving a signed term sheet. They're in, he shouted. Blue Horizon is funding us. 2 million seed. It's official. Cognify is alive. The room erupted. The kids cheered, hugging each other, some even tearing up. Ethan stood in the center, the weight of the paper in his hand. 2 million wasn't billions. It wasn't a Neurosphere, but it was a start. A seed. Proof that he wasn't finished. He lifted his gaze, voice steady. This is just the beginning. Ryan Hale thinks he won. But we're not just building a company, we're building a comeback. Cheers filled the room, echoing into the night. For the first time since his fall, Ethan Cole wasn't just surviving, he was rising. The news hit like a thunderclap. Neurosphere files. $200 million lawsuit against former CEO Ethan Cole. The article spread across every major tech outlet. Ryan Hale stood at the podium during a press conference, polished as ever, delivering his lines with a politician's precision. Neurosphere will not tolerate theft of intellectual property, Ryan declared, cameras flashing. This is about protecting innovation and protecting our investors from a fraud who refuses to let go. The word fraud echoed in Ethan's ears. It didn't matter that Cognify was built from scratch, that not a single line of code had been copied. Ryan was shaping the narrative again, and the world was eating it up by evening. Ethan's inbox was flooded with reporters' questions. Investors who had shown interest in Cognify hesitated, some even backing out. The fragile hope he'd been building felt like it was cracking all over again. Ethan slammed his laptop shut, pacing the co-working space like a caged animal. This is exactly what he wants, Diego said, trying to calm him. He wants to drown us in lawsuits, scare everyone away before we get off the ground. And it's working, Ethan snapped. His voice was ragged, his hands trembling with barely restrained fury. One press conference and half the world's already convinced I'm guilty again. Diego leaned forward, steady. Then we fight louder. Show them the truth. Use the evidence we've got on him. Ethan shook his head. Not yet. If I go public now, it'll look like a desperate counterattack. I need more. I need something that leaves no room for doubt. The room fell silent. The weight of Ryan's shadow pressing down on them 2 days later. Ethan's heart sank when he saw her. Madison appeared on the evening news, standing beside Ryan at a Neurosphere charity gala. She wasn't holding his arm, but the cameras didn't care. The captions wrote their own story. Ryan, Hale, Madison Clark attend gala together, from scandal to power couple. Ethan's chest burned. He turned off the TV, but the image seared into his mind. Madison, radiant under the lights, standing next to the man who had destroyed him. Minutes later, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You should see who your girl's keeping company with these days. Looks like she knows who the real winner is. Ethan clenched his fists. He knew it was Ryan. The bastard wasn't just targeting his company, he was targeting his heart. 2 nights later, Ethan waited in a dimly lit cafe in Oakland. The kind of place where no one cared who you were as long as you paid for your coffee. Madison walked in. Her coat pulled tight, eyes scanning nervously before she spotted him. She sat across from him, tension hanging thick in the air. Ethan, she began, her voice soft but tired. I didn't know the press would spin it that way. Ryan invited my firm to handle Neurosphere's PR for the lawsuit. I didn't. You stood next to him. Ethan cut in, his voice sharp. You let the cameras see you with him. Do you have any idea what that does to me? To us, her eyes flashed with hurt. To us, Ethan, you shut me out. You left me with nothing but headlines and silence. What was I supposed to believe? I told you I didn't do it, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I told you I was framed. And I want to believe you, Madison whispered, tears welling. But every day, there's more evidence, more noise. And now you're building something new while lawsuits fly. You're fighting a war I don't even understand. How am I supposed to stand by your side when I don't know what's true? Ethan leaned forward, desperate. Then look me in the eyes right now. Do I look like a liar to you? She held his gaze, trembling. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, she whispered, no. But Ryan, he's powerful. He can bury you, Ethan, and I don't want to watch you destroy yourself chasing revenge. Ethan's jaw tightened. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about truth. And if you can't stand with me," his voice faltered, "then maybe I have to do this alone." Tears slipped down Madison's cheeks. She reached for his hand, but he pulled it back. The wound cut both ways. When Madison left, Ethan sat alone in the cafe until closing, the bitter taste of coffee cold on his tongue. Ryan had taken everything: his company, his reputation, and now, piece by piece, the woman he loved. But instead of breaking him, the pain hardened into steel. Back at the co-working space, Ethan gathered Diego and the team. He laid the files on the table, the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the fragments Claire had given him. "It's time," he said. His voice was steady, cold. "We're going public." The kids looked at each other, fear flickering in their eyes. "Once we release this," Diego said slowly, "there's no going back. He'll come after us with everything he's got." "Good," Ethan replied. "Let him." The next morning, a package landed on the desk of a Wall Street Journal reporter, an encrypted drive, anonymous but undeniable. Inside, the data trail was clear: millions siphoned from Neurosphere into accounts tied directly to Ryan Hale. Within hours, whispers began. By evening, the story broke. Exclusive evidence suggests financial misconduct at Neurosphere under Ryan Hale. The internet erupted. For the first time, Ryan was on the defensive. Ethan watched the coverage from the shadows of the co-working space, his face lit by the glow of the screen. The war had begun in earnest. Ryan wasn't just his enemy anymore. He was prey, and Ethan Cole was coming for him. The headlines spread like wildfire. Ryan Hale under federal investigation after leak. Evidence mounts of massive fraud inside Neurosphere. Golden Boy turned villain. Hale faces the fire. For once, it wasn't Ethan Cole's face plastered across the news as the villain. It was Ryan's, but Ethan didn't celebrate. Not yet. He knew Ryan too well. Cornered animals didn't surrender, they lashed out. The counterattack 3 days later, Ryan staged his counterpunch. He appeared on CNBC, suit crisp, smile perfectly practiced. "These so-called leaks are desperate fabrications," Ryan said smoothly. "Ethan Cole has been trying to drag Neurosphere down since his removal. He is a bitter, failed man clinging to lies." He leaned toward the camera, voice lowering for effect. "I built this company back from the brink. He left it in. The evidence against me is fecund. I will prove it." The host nodded gravely. The narrative was far from settled. Watching from the co-working space, Ethan's fists tightened until his knuckles whitened. He could almost feel Ryan's smirk burning through the screen. The confrontation arranged that night. Claire called. "The SEC circling," she said. "But Ryan still has allies on the board. If he spins this well enough, he could survive." Unless what?" Ethan pressed. "Unless you face him. Publicly, head to head." The idea set his blood racing. "You mean a live confrontation?" "Exactly. There's a tech summit next week. Ryan's keynote. I can get you a slot. If you stand there, show the evidence yourself, before the cameras, before the world he can't spin out of it." Ethan hesitated. It would be the biggest gamble of his life. If the evidence held, he'd be vindicated. If not, he'd be branded a liar forever. But he knew there was no other way. "Do it," he said. Madison's dilemma. Night before the summit, Madison appeared at his apartment door. She looked torn apart, eyes swollen from crying. "Ethan," she whispered, "you can't do this. He frowned. Can't do what? Confront him publicly. If you're wrong, if the evidence isn't airtight, Ryan will destroy you for good. And if you're right, he'll go down swinging. He won't just lose. He'll take everyone with Jim, including you. Ethan stepped closer, searching her face. Do you believe me now? Tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, God help me, yes. But believing you and watching you get crushed aren't the same thing. He cupped her face gently, thumb brushing away her tears. Madison, I've lost everything, my company, my name, almost you. If I back down now, I lose the only thing I have left, the truth. I have to finish this. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch, torn between love and fear. Finally, she whispered, then I'll be there. No matter what happens, the San Francisco Tech Future Summit was packed with press, investors, and industry leaders. The air hummed with anticipation. Ryan Hale strode onto the stage first, greeted by applause. He smiled confidently, launching into his keynote about trust and innovation. But midway through, the doors at the back opened. Murmurs spread as Ethan Cole walked in, flanked by Claire and Diego. Cameras swung to catch him, the fallen titan striding back into the spotlight. Ryan faltered for just a second before recovering. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have an uninvited guest. Ethan took the stage, facing Ryan across the podium. The room buzzed with tension, a live wire waiting to snap. I'm not here as a guest, Ethan said into the microphone, his voice steady. I'm here for the truth. The reckoning. Ryan laughed, the sound brittle. The truth. From you, please. This man has lied, cheated, and begged for attention since the day he was removed. Ethan turned to the audience. You've heard his version. Now see mine. He pulled up the encrypted files, projecting them on the massive screen. Offshore accounts, transfers, shell companies, every trail leading back to Hale Consulting LLC. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashing. Ryan's face darkened. Fabrications, stolen data. Claire stepped forward, voice firm. Those records came from my tenure as CFO. I can verify their authenticity. The room erupted. Ryan's mask cracked, fury twisting his features. You think this will save you, Ethan? You're nothing. You'll always be nothing without me. Ethan's eyes locked on his. No, Ryan. I was nothing because of you. But not anymore. The crowd surged with shouts, reporters clamoring, moderators trying to regain control. But it was too late. The reckoning had come. Aftermath by evening. The story had flipped entirely. Ryan Hale exposed in fraud scandal. Ethan Cole vindicated. Neurosphere in freefall as investors flee. Ryan was finished. Federal agents were circling. The board had turned its back. Ethan stood outside the summit hall, the night air cool on his face. For the first time in months, he could breathe. Madison appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. He looked at her, raw and uncertain. You stayed, he whispered. Always, she said softly. I just needed to see the man I fell in love with again. And tonight, I did. For a moment, the world felt still. Ethan knew the road ahead would be long. Cognify was still fragile, his reputation still scarred. But tonight, he had one. Tonight, the truth had shattered the lies. And with Madison's hand in his, Ethan Cole felt something he hadn't in a very long time. Hope. 6 months later, San Francisco looked different. The skyline was the same. The fog still rolled in each morning, but for Ethan Cole, the city no longer felt like a prison. It felt like possibility again. Neurosphere had collapsed under the weight of Ryan Hale's exposed fraud. Ryan himself awaited trial, his name now synonymous with greed and betrayal. The empire he had stolen crumbled faster than anyone imagined. Meanwhile was rising. The once scrappy prototype had grown into a lean, focused startup with a small but fierce team. The first pilot programs were live in universities and medical labs, and early results showed promise. Investors who had once turned their backs were calling again, eager to get in before Cognify broke wide open. Ethan sat in the modest new office, nothing like the gleaming towers of old Neurosphere, but alive with energy. Whiteboards covered in notes, engineers clustered in corners. The air smelled of ambition, not champagne this time. It felt right. The office door creaked open, and Madison stepped inside. She wasn't there as PR consultant, or as the woman caught between headlines. She was there simply as herself. She smiled softly at him. "Your team let me in. I hope that's okay." Ethan rose from his desk, his heart tightening the way it always did when he saw her. "It's more than okay." She walked toward him, the sunlight catching in her auburn hair. "I read the latest article in Wired. They called you the Phoenix of Silicon Valley." He chuckled. "Better than fraud, I guess." Her smile widened. "Better, yes. But you know what I liked most? You didn't talk about revenge. You didn't mention Ryan. You just talked about the future." Ethan's eyes softened. "Because that's what matters now. Not him. Not the past. Just building something worth believing in." She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. "I believe in it. And I believe in you." That evening, they walked together through the city streets. The air was cool, alive with the hum of traffic and laughter from nearby bars. For once, Ethan wasn't hiding under a hoodie. People still recognized him. Some nodded, some whispered, but there was no venom in their eyes anymore. Only curiosity. At a quiet overlook above the bay, Madison leaned against him. "So," she said, "what comes next?" Ethan gazed at the water, the lights of the Golden Gate Bridge glowing in the distance. "Cognify will grow. We'll take it one step at a time. I don't care about billion-dollar valuations anymore. I just want to build something that matters. Something that outlives the scandals and the lies, and us." Madison asked softly. He turned, meeting her eyes. "Us. We're not rebuilding, we're starting fresh. No ghosts, just you and me, figuring it out together." Her eyes glistened as she whispered, "That's all I ever wanted." They stood there in silence. The city sprawling before them, the future uncertain but wide open. Months later, headlines would change again. Cognify secures Series A funding. From ashes to innovation, the Ethan Cole story. Second, chances in Silicon Valley. But for Ethan, the truest headline was one no paper would ever print. He had lost everything, but he had found himself. And in doing so, he had found his way back to love. The scars of betrayal would never fully fade. The memory of Ryan Hale's smirk, of headlines screaming fraud, of nights on Jason's couch delivering tacos, those would stay with him forever. But scars weren't just reminders of pain. They were proof of survival. And as Ethan Cole stood at the edge of the bay, Madison's hand in his, he finally understood. this wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning.